written over 500 years ago by an exiled Florentine diplomat, these words are among the many that led to the banning of The Prince. The book was seen as dangerously subversive, even evil. In 1539, English Cardinal Reginald Pole condemned Machiavelli as the enemy of all mankind. Others went further, calling The Prince a handbook for the devil. Niccolò Machiavelli quickly became synonymous with political evil, portrayed as a cold-hearted manipulator who preached betrayal, cruelty, and lies. And in a way, he did. Machiavelli openly advised leaders to abandon morality in favor of results. He wrote that rulers should not concern themselves with being good, but with being effective. If achieving power meant destroying entire families, including children, if it required manipulating allies or murdering opponents, then so be it. The end always justifies the means, no matter how dark those means are. But here's the uncomfortable part. Beneath the ruthless surface of Machiavelli's ideas lies a raw, unfiltered truth about human nature and power. He wasn't writing fiction, he was describing the world as it truly was, and in many ways still is. While his advice may sound brutal, it reveals strategies that remain relevant for anyone navigating ambition, politics, or leadership today. In this video, we're going to dive deep into Machiavelli's mind, exploring why he came to such controversial conclusions, what we can learn from his brutal honesty, and where, perhaps, his pragmatism crosses the line into cruelty. But first, let's discuss what made him write his masterpiece, The Prince. Born in 1469 in Florence, Machiavelli grew up amid constant political turbulence. Italy was not a unified nation, but a patchwork of city-states: Florence, Venice, Milan, Naples, the Papal States, each locked in power struggles both with one another and with foreign invaders like France and Spain. Political alliances were fragile, betrayals were common, and mercenary armies could be bought and turned overnight. In Florence alone, leadership shifted violently. The Medici family was overthrown in 1494, and for a brief, fiery moment, a Dominican friar named Savonarola ruled with apocalyptic zeal before being hanged and burned as a heretic. Just days later, the 29-year-old Machiavelli began his political career. As a senior official in Florence's Republic, Machiavelli managed diplomatic missions and oversaw military affairs. He observed, and often negotiated with, figures like Cesare Borgia, whose ruthless ambition would become the model for Machiavelli's Prince. The lessons were brutal. In a world where trust was a liability, only cunning, adaptability, and strength ensured survival. When the Medici returned to power in 1512, Machiavelli was accused of conspiracy, tortured, and exiled to his farm in San Cassiano. It was there, stripped of power, that he produced the works that would define him forever: The Prince and Discourses on Livy. The Prince was written in 1513 as both a gift and a plea to Lorenzo de' Medici, the man whose family had cast Machiavelli out. Far from a lofty treatise on virtue, it is a cold, clear manual on how rulers must behave in a corrupt world. Goodness is optional. Effectiveness is not. As Machiavelli warned, the ends justify the means, a concept now infamous but rooted in his brutally honest understanding of politics. In his own time, these ideas were scandalous. He was branded an atheist, a cynic, even the devil's tutor. But beneath the controversy lies a piercing diagnosis of power. For Machiavelli, leadership is not about idealism, it's about results. A prince must learn to act immorally when necessary, to manipulate public perception, and above all, to protect the state, even at great personal or ethical cost. What follows is a journey into Machiavelli's hardest truths, which I will discuss now, point by point. For this can be said of men in general, that they are ungrateful, fickle, hypocrites and dissemblers, avoiders of dangers, greedy for gain. When you actually become needy, they turn away. Machiavelli's first And perhaps most disturbing lesson is this: people cannot be trusted. At the heart of the prince lies a cold, clear-eyed view of human nature. He saw people not as they should be, but as they are, selfish, deceitful, and motivated by self-interest. Whether rich or poor, noble or common, Machiavelli believed all people were guided more by fear and greed than by gratitude or loyalty. In good times, followers will shower a leader with praise, pledging loyalty, and even offering their lives. But when danger arises, they vanish. As Machiavelli puts it, they melt away in the face of danger. For him, trust built on affection or promises is an illusion, one that collapses the moment things get difficult. Gratitude, he warns, is forgotten the instant it becomes inconvenient. This dark realism wasn't just philosophical, it was formed through experience. Living through the brutal political scene of Renaissance Italy, Machiavelli witnessed betrayal at every level. One figure who deeply shaped his thinking was Pope Alexander VI, the infamous Rodrigo Borgia. As head of the Catholic Church, Alexander was expected to embody moral virtue, but he instead prioritized family ambition and power. His reign was marked by corruption, lies, and ruthless political maneuvering, including using excommunication as a personal weapon. If even the Pope could not be trusted, what hope was there for ordinary men? For Machiavelli, assuming goodwill in others is a fatal mistake. He famously wrote that if all men were good, his harsh advice would be unnecessary, but they aren't. A ruler who acts with consistent virtue, believing others will do the same, must come to ruin among so many who are not good. In politics, those who hold tightly to honesty and kindness will be crushed by those willing to lie, cheat, and betray. While love is fragile and easily lost, fear is a far more reliable tool of control. How that is what I will discuss now. If people throw stones at you, throw bread instead, with a grenade inside. It might perhaps be answered that we should wish to be both, but since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. Once Machiavelli exposes the harsh reality of human nature, he addresses one of his most iconic dilemmas. Should a ruler aim to be loved or feared? Ideally, both. But since love and fear rarely coexist, Machiavelli's answer is blunt and unsentimental. Fear is the safer bet. Why? Because love is conditional. People are quick to praise and pledge loyalty when things are going well, but their affection is shallow, easily lost the moment hardship appears. Men are ungrateful, fickle, and cowardly, Machiavelli writes. They will offer you their blood, property, life, and children when the need is far distant. But when it approaches, they turn against you. Love binds people through gratitude, a weak glue that dissolves when tested. Fear, however, is anchored in the dread of punishment, and that, he says, people never forget. Still, Machiavelli does not advocate for cruelty without cause. He is clear that fear must never cross into hatred. A prince must be feared in such a way that, if he is not loved, he is at least not hated. The line is fine but crucial. Hatred breeds rebellion, but carefully measured fear maintains obedience without backlash. For this reason, he warns rulers to avoid attacking people's property or honor, especially their wealth and their women, as these are sure paths to public resentment. A vivid example comes from Cesare Borgia, whom Machiavelli admired for his effective use of fear. Borgia's ruthless campaign to pacify the lawless Romagna region involved swift and severe punishments, but it worked. He brought order where chaos had ruled, and in doing so, earned respect. His cruelty was not random, but calculated. A few well-placed strokes, Machiavelli might say, that prevented far greater bloodshed. In this light, fear becomes a political tool, not a moral failure. It's a means to preserve stability and control in a world where trust is fleeting. And the reason this tactic is important is for the safety of the state, which should be like a mother to a ruler. People should either be caressed or crushed. If you do them minor damage, they will get their revenge, but if you cripple them, there is nothing they can do. In one of his most unsettling ideas, Machiavelli lays the foundation for what would become the doctrine of reason of state, ragion di Stato. The notion that a ruler's highest duty is to protect and preserve the state, even if doing so requires actions that violate traditional morality. For Machiavelli, politics operates by its own brutal logic, one in which ethical norms must often yield to necessity. This principle emerged from what Machiavelli saw all around him: weak rulers overthrown, well-meaning leaders destroyed, and entire states ruined because they clung to moral ideals in a world that rewarded ruthlessness. He concluded that the survival of the state justifies extraordinary measures, whether deception, betrayal, cruelty, or violence. Machiavelli did not admire cruelty for its own sake. He simply believed that in the real world, where threats are constant and human nature is corrupt, rulers must be ready to act with decisive force. If a leader must inflict harm, it should be swift, severe, and final, so that no one is left to retaliate. He also emphasized the importance of surrounding oneself with capable and loyal advisors. While virtuous men are rare, keeping competent allies close can make the difference between survival and downfall. Perhaps most radical was Machiavelli's separation of politics from religion. He respected religion as a tool for social cohesion, but he firmly rejected the idea that rulers should govern according to Christian virtue or theological doctrine. In contrast to thinkers like Aquinas, who fused politics with divine morality, Machiavelli argued that public duty demands its own logic. The prince is not a pastor, his job is not to save souls, but to secure order. This view shocked Renaissance Europe and led to the prince being banned for centuries. But Machiavelli was unmoved. For him, the state was sacred, and everything else, including personal morality, was secondary. Good laws and good arms were the real foundation of a stable state, and you could not have one without the other. He advised his ruler to be both fox and lion. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. To survive and succeed, a ruler must be both cunning and strong. The fox represents intelligence, deception, and the ability to detect hidden threats, while the lion embodies force, intimidation, and the power to crush open enemies. Success in politics, he argues, comes from knowing when to use each. He warns that brute strength alone is not enough. A ruler who only plays the lion and forgets the fox, Machiavelli says, doesn't know what he's doing. Force may overpower, but without cleverness, it leaves a ruler blind to betrayal and manipulation. On the flip side, being only cunning without strength leaves one vulnerable to open attack. The truly effective leader must move fluidly between guile and might. Take Pope Alexander VI, whom Machiavelli admired as a master fox. He was notorious for making lavish promises and breaking them without hesitation. Yet he thrived politically because he understood a basic truth. People are easily deceived and often prefer comforting lies over harsh truths. Machiavelli notes that Alexander never did anything but con people, and yet he succeeded spectacularly. This is not a blanket endorsement of dishonesty, but a cold reading of political necessity. If all men were good, this would be bad advice, Machiavelli admits. But since they are not, there's no reason for a prince to keep his word when it's no longer in his interest. A ruler must learn to appear virtuous while reserving the right to act ruthlessly when the situation demands it. Machiavelli also understood the psychology behind manipulation. People are drawn to appearances. They believe what benefits them or confirms their hopes. A cunning leader can exploit this tendency by crafting a favorable image, while hiding his true intentions. The trick is to maintain the illusion of honesty while being ready to act with decisive violence if necessary. To modern ears, this can sound cynical, even ruthless. But for Machiavelli, it's not cruelty, it's realism. And in the violent, unstable world he inhabited, that realism could mean the difference between survival and ruin. And a virtuous man can never be like this. A man who makes a profession of being good in all respects must come to ruin among so many who are not good. Niccolò Machiavelli states outright that a prince must learn how not to be good, not because goodness is inherently bad, but because in the political arena, those who refuse to bend will eventually break. A leader who strictly follows values like honesty, loyalty, mercy, or compassion may look noble, but will be undone by less principled rivals. Machiavelli doesn't tell rulers to be cruel or unjust without reason, but he does insist that morality must never stand in the way of survival. Interestingly, Machiavelli draws a clear line between appearing virtuous and actually being virtuous. The public judges a ruler by appearances, not internal motives. Therefore, the prince must perform morality, projecting an image of piety, loyalty, and honor, even if, behind the scenes, he's ready to betray, deceive, or strike when necessary. As Machiavelli puts it, the prince should not depart from good if possible, but know how to enter into evil when forced. This pragmatic morality echoes the philosophy of Nietzsche's Übermensch, an individual who creates his own values and is not bound by conventional ethical standards. For Machiavelli, the good ruler is not someone enslaved to inherited codes of right and wrong, but someone self-sufficient, whose only true obligation is to protect and preserve the state, even if it means violating traditional norms. He drives the point home when he writes that a ruler is frequently obliged to act against loyalty, against charity, against humanity, and against religion. These are noble ideals, but they are often obstacles to decisive action. In times of crisis, hesitation born from virtue can destroy a state. A good man might hesitate to act brutally, but a successful prince knows that mercy in the wrong moment can lead to chaos, rebellion, or invasion. Anyways, this was harsh, honest advice from an Italian philosopher, which I think is pretty good if we are talking about human nature. I do not agree with all of his tactics, and I'm sure you must have your own opinion, which I will be very happy to hear in the comment section.